Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. Got a great show for you today. Just got off the line with Marcus King. Marcus was one of the big people who made my book a reality. He has been with Cross Country Magazine for an awful long time. And he does all their gear reviews and wing reviews and is in charge of most of the marketing you see. Before that, he did marketing for Ozone. He was with the Ozone team right from the beginning. Back in the Dav and Mike days, he was been part of the Red Bull X-Alps, reporting on that since the very beginning. That's where he and I got to know each other more. It's his reporting on the race. He started flying in 1991 and was part of the British team and PWCs and has a long history of flight, and all those reviews you see in Cross Country Magazine of all the different wings and all the different harnesses are because of Marcus. So we talk about all of that, and then we get to a not so comfortable subject, but in this case it's all coming out pretty well. Marcus pounded really hard in September, just going out behind his house in Griolier, which is right behind Gourdon in the southern Maritimes in France, right where Ozone is. Amazing place to fly, an awesome place to clock up hours because you fly there pretty much every day. And he was just going out for a very standard hike and fly, no red flags, no wind, nothing gnarly at all, just a completely mellow day. And sometimes that's what grabs you. He talks about the complacency, flying a different wing than he was really used to, not having enough margin. As always, it's never one thing, it's a few different things, and the ground hurts. So this one looked pretty grim in the beginning. I remember getting the message right away from Ed Ewing, the editor of the magazine, and it sounded pretty rough. But 4 months later, Marcus is on the path to full recovery and will hopefully be flying again soon. And this is another one of those reminders that we need to make sure that every flight we take is one we put a lot of focus into. A lot of great lessons here, a lot of fun stories, a lot of great background, and I think you'll definitely enjoy it. A little bit of housekeeping before we get there. As you'll hear at the very end of the show, Marcus talks about an awesome giveaway that Cross Country Magazine is doing right now. I wanted to just put it in the front of the show too, but if you subscribe right now, go to xcmag.com/subscribe. You could be in to win a wing, and it's a wing of your choice from Gin, Advance, Ozone, or Sup Air. Pretty cool giveaway. Check that out. If you don't already subscribe to the magazine, you definitely should. It's a great mag. And the other thing is I've got a whole slew of new Patagonia t-shirts coming our way. They should be here, and I'll have them up on the website hopefully by the time this show goes live, if not in the next couple of days. But I've needed some new shirts for a long time with our logo and our motto, fly more, talk less. So if you've been looking for one of these shirts and haven't been that jazzed about the gray ones I've had forever and ever, finally run out of those, and I got a new batch coming. So check that out on the website, cloudbasedmayhem.com, and I'll get it off to you. Happy New Year, everybody. Enjoy the show. Cheers. Marcus, welcome to the Mayhem. Most of the time I see you in the Alps for the Red Bull X-Alps. This is a nice way to see one another. We're going to get into what has defined, I'm sure, much of your life the last few months. For those who don't know, you hit the ground pretty hard, I understand, and you're making a good comeback. So we'll get to that. But I thought where we'd start, for those who don't know about your history, we're sitting in a party together and we're having a chat, and I ask you, who are you and what do you do? How would you answer that?
Okay, well, job-wise, I'm the designer for Cross Country Magazine, or one of the partners actually in Cross Country Magazine, along with Ed Ewing and Hugh Miller. So that's my main job. But I've been paragliding for a long time, 30 years plus.
Nice.
Started back in 1991.
The early
Small,
days.
yeah, on the small hills of Wiltshire in England. Quite different from what the flying is around here, where I live now, which is in France. So I was working as a programmer at a manufacturing company, and I started flying back then. Just saw an advert in a What's On magazine. I thought that looks interesting, and I had seen it on a climbing tour in Chamonix. We'd passed through Chamonix, and I'd seen these gliders coming off the Breville, but didn't know anything about it. And that was probably a year or two before I saw this advert and went, why not? All my mates had gone climbing in Scotland, but I had to be around to be on call for the company I was working for. So it was kind of a bit of a loose end, and then saw this advert and thought, yeah, why not give it a go? And I was really lucky. I had 4 days of beautiful weather, which is quite uncommon in Britain.
Yeah, right.
And, was able to fly by the end of it. So, and the bug had bitten almost straight away.
What did that instruction look like back in 91? Here's this thing, go.
Yeah, kind of. I think we were on Airwave Black Magics and other such things. So the glide angle of a brick. And we were just on sloping hills, so you could kind of just run down the hill. You might get a bit off the ground and kind of wobble your way down and then touch down again. I mean, there was no school building or anything like that. The instructor, Dave Solomon, was my instructor, turned up in his Land Rover. We met in a car park, we drove up the hill, and that was it. I spent the day on the hill.
Did you have any hang background, or do you start right off with PG?
I started straight away with paragliding.
Huh, interesting.
I'd been into climbing a bit. I went to university in North Wales, which is kind of the home of climbing at the time. I actually met Bob Jury there while I was a student. So it was the first time we met, and we then met later through paragliding and did stuff together. But
I just watched that. I think it's called, Hugh put me onto it, a Big Blue Sky. And I've been preparing for these talks with some of the legendary hang pilots, Roy Haggard and Tom Pagini and John Heine and those guys. And I'll be going out to California here soon to talk to them. But that documentary of the beginning of hang gliding is amazing. And the footage they have of exactly what you're talking about but this was the early 70s, when they're just hucking it with these crazy contraptions and they'll fly 10 seconds or 15 seconds and just, monumentally stoked and can't wait for the next one. And it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. I mean, when I started paragliding, I passed my license in Britain, went to the local club, which was the Haven Hang Gliding Club as it was then, I guess. And I turned up. There was three paraglider pilots in the meeting and a room full of hang glider pilots. So hang gliding was, the thing that everybody did at that time.
Right, sure. Fast forward a little bit. Then where did it go?
So I met, through doing the British Nationals and other comps, I met Mike Kavanagh. And when
Ozone.
they set up Ozone, I spoke to him about a job there. And in the early 2000s, I ended up moving out to France with him. Well, not with him, to Ozone, to come and work for Ozone as their marketing person, doing the website, doing adverts, doing manuals. But back then there was only five or six of us. We were in a very small office, and all the gliders came to that office to be then distributed. So it wasn't just doing my work, it was packing boxes, it was going out on the hill with David and Robbie, who were the test pilots at the time, helping test the bigger sizes a bit. So it was you did a bit of everything. It was really nice sort of family scene. Had a real family feel about the company, and we all worked together and we all played together. And so that's what brought me to France. And then when I was back before that in Britain, when I was part of the club scene, I'd done the newsletter for the club. And so when I was in France and I got to meet Bob Jury, who then became the editor of Cross Country, he then asked me to join him to help with Cross Country. So I ended up moving from Ozone to become Cross Country and doing the design and layout of the magazine.
But you were able to stay in France to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bob was stay. We both lived in the same village. We're both in a village just behind Gordon, which is a fairly well-known flying site. It's where Ozone test team test all the time, and BGD are in the same area. And I think Sup Air are also here. It's all part of the Sup Air test team are here.
Okay.
So it's a well-known flying area.
Yeah. I mean, you fly pretty much every day, don't you?
You can do, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a bit more challenging in recent years with climate change, changing the winds a bit. Definitely when we first moved here, you'd expect 300 days a year.
Oh, amazing.
According to Bruce.
Yeah. And were you back then, were you also testing gliders, or were you more marketing? Because I know now you do a lot of testing in gliders.
I was more, for Ozone, I was more marketing.
Okay.
I did get asked to test, not for a safety point of view. So I didn't do the EN test style flying, but I did testing of the bigger sizes to see how they felt, see if they were in line with what the guys were saying for the smaller sizes. So we got involved a bit in that, but not proper test flying. Not the sort of test flying that Russ and Honor and do now, which is, the safety tests and all that.
Sure. And what was your own kind of path or journey? I always think of Jim Mallinson when I say journey, so that's one of his least favorite words. But what was your? I understand you flew World Cups for a while. Where has your passion kind of led you with the flying aspect thing? It sounds like mostly it's been marketing in terms of the work, but I know you're a very keen pilot. You spend a lot of time in the air.
Yeah, so I started flying. When I first flew, there weren't so many of us flying. So, I mean, I remember the first year flying, I flew about 11 kilometers, I think, on one flight. And it was in the top 10 of the British League. I was in the top 10 of the British League. So it was very easy to find yourself quite highly placed. So I ended up doing the British Nationals. And then from that, doing the World Cup. Not overly successfully. So I found myself in this bigger pool of very good pilots from Europe and realised I didn't have the skill level that I necessarily needed. But it was fun. It was a learning process. So I kept doing national level competitions, I guess. I never had amazing success. I'm not a brilliant comp pilot, I don't think. But I enjoyed it, and it taught me a huge amount. So it was a great learning process for cross-country flying. Yeah. And I think that's probably more my passion. I like flying through the mountains. So here we're lucky we've got some great routes from the back door. You can walk out the back door and take off and go north. And that takes you to some very nice mountains.
Yeah, the Maritimes are one of my favorite places on earth. It's just, I only got to really hang out there very much for either the training of the races or the races, but it's I always say I should spend more time down there. They're just magnificent. They're incredible for bivy. I did one of my favorite trips in all those years of training. I think it was for the first one in 2015. I started in Chamonix at the Brevant and hiked up the Brevant and had my bivy kit and just flew down the Maritimes and got to, I don't know, 30, 40K of the Med. And, it's just incredible. You're right on the border of France and Italy, and yet you feel like you kind of have it all to yourself. It's a pretty amazing area.
I mean, there's a lot of terrain.
A lot of big terrain. I think people
and you go a bit
haven't been in there, you don't realize it. It's big stuff.
Yeah, because it's the main chain coming to the sea. So
yeah.
And Tim Pentreath has made some great videos that highlight some of the possibilities and flying through the Écrin and stuff. And I remember when I first did a lot of cross-country flying with Bob Jury, we did some flights through the Economy early on, probably early 2000s. And I think we were some of the first people to fly through them. And it was just, I remember Bob saying it's some of the most intense terrain that he's flown through, and he's flown in the Himalayas and other places. So
it really is. Help me with the Ebron, the fort above Lake Ebron, a real famous flying site by the castle up there. The castle burned down Saint Vincent. Yeah. One of my first, I used to do these I did a couple trips with Toby Colomb with Passion Paragliding, where he would start in Annecy and end in Nice, or start in Nice and end in Annecy. So it was kind of a van version of the Maritimes part of the X-Alps, but he would just create a task given the day, and you'd go as far as you could, and then we'd stay there and then start from there the next day. It was really neat. It was a cool way to learn that part of the world. And we one day we started at Saint Vincent and flew down to Saint Andre, and it's only, what is that, 100K?
50, I think it's 50K down to Saint Andre.
Is it only 50K?
It's kind of a big
memory tricks us.
It's the north of Saint Vincent. On the top of the ridge is a Dormeuse, and there's a big fort on the very top of the ridge.
Yep.
And that's one of the turn points that we normally use if we're doing triangles from here.
Okay. Yeah. I just remember that being so awesome. I mean, some of that terrain between there is just gray rock and spiky, and, it's very much kind of like my backyard. It's just, whoa, where am I? This doesn't seem like France. It's really magnificent.
Pretty stunning.
It's
big
really
rock
stunning.
Faces
and the Brits you often have one of your national events there in Saint Andre, right? I remember Russ Ogden saying that his two favorite places to fly a comp were Chelan here in Washington and Saint Andre. And Saint Andre is a pretty remarkable place to fly triangle.
Yeah, there's lots of opportunity now. And I think the great thing about Saint Andre is, in the past, it was loads of people just flew the Dormeuse Ridge up to Saint Vincent and back. But now people are flying out into the flatlands and big triangles out that way, out to Sistron, and then back across to the top of the Dormeuse. So, I mean, Luke and Honorin and others have done some big flights from Col de Blaine, going out towards Sistron and out almost to the big Rhone Valley.
Yeah.
And then back across and then down to create 300K triangles. It's very impressive.
Yeah, that one, what Baptiste did last year, that was at 350 or something. It's just, ay, caramba.
But even for the normal pilot,
yeah,
there's the opportunity to do 200K triangles around here.
Yeah, sure.
So, because you just shorten some of those legs, and you're still using the main thoroughfares, but you can to come back on and stuff.
Magnificent place to fly. We haven't cracked that code over here yet. We don't, the terrain doesn't quite line up for us in that way. We climb awful fast, we get awful high, but we just have not figured out, it's there. We know it's there, but we just haven't figured out how to do it. You have those early starts where you guys can fly 50, 60K without making a turn, even at 830, you just stick your wingtip on the terrain, keep going. It's pretty special. Okay, switching to the mag, and you are the guy who does a lot of wing reports and wing testing. I would imagine that's tricky from a perspective of the magazine. You want to be honest, but you also want to be, you don't want to potentially ruin a relationship with a manufacturer. How does that work in the back end? I think a lot of people are curious about that. You want to put out a report that is accurate, but gear reviews can often be swayed. How does that work?
Yeah, I think we have to be very careful about what we say about wings. As in, I don't think you can be overly negative, because obviously manufacturers will not take kindly to that. It's not just because, they are paying us money for efforts, but we try to be totally truthful about our reviews. What I always think is I'm trying to explain to people the character of the wing. I don't think there's really bad wings these days.
That's it. Yeah, exactly.
And also, performance between different wings, I can't tell in a review. It's really hard to tell.
Yeah.
I think over time, then maybe a glider is shown to perform a little bit better, but it takes lots of people flying it in competitions but for the lower class wings, you don't get that information because it's all subjective, and unless you're flying exactly the same harness and clothes even, you can't compare performance. If you talk to the guys at Ozone, they spend a lot of time trying to compare two wings together on glide, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
Because
it was interesting.
The pilots and the harness, even the clothing, even if you've got a beard, can affect the glide.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just down at the Monarca in Valle, and there were quite a few pilots flying the GR5, the Gen version of the submarine, and it's so interesting because none of us really know how good it goes. I was flying the Drifter too, and I think the only one on that harness, and we all kind of went, but we won't know for a year. Really, you got to put a lot of people on this thing and fly it around and see, does it have an advantage on the sub? Is it a disadvantage? Can we even tell? It's you can do all the wind tunnel testing and everything else and get the numbers, but like you said, it's pretty hard, isn't it? It's got to be from where you're sitting. It's got to be nearly impossible.
It's also how usable that performance is, isn't it? For a glider, definitely. Obviously, the harness is slightly different, and I think, again, time gives you that information if it's used a lot in competitions. So I guess now with the sports class competitions, we're going to get that information for that level of glider as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Whereas before, it was we were only getting that for the top end gliders. Now we're seeing the true performance of gliders. But
the sports class thing, I've been meaning to do a show specifically on it. It's really exciting, isn't it? I mean, one of the things that I love about sports like baseball and basketball and football is there's not really gear. It doesn't matter, I mean, unless the shoes, okay. I mean, maybe a pair of Air Jordans is a little bit better, but it's really down to the athlete. And this has been one of it's hard when you get into sports like skiing and paragliding where the equipment is a really big deal. Michaela Schifrin, she ships a container of skis everywhere she goes, and she's got a tuner just for her. He only does her skis. And so, it's a marketable advantage when you're relying on equipment, and our sport really relies on equipment. And so, I've often thought, wouldn't it be great if we were all flying the exact same thing? And then we could really see, who is the best pilot. Then we would see that Honorin still wins.
Probably,
but probably exactly. But the sports class is really cool because it allows competition at not such a fierce end of the spectrum where you're not totally reliant on gear. It's exciting. I'm really glad that this is happening.
I think it's a very exciting new way for the competitions. And I did a couple of the comps last year, sorry. And it was really nice to be there. It really made me enthusiastic for competition flying again, because I didn't have to be on the whizzy machine. I could be on a relatively safe machine.
Yes.
I feel comfortable on it.
And they go good.
Yeah.
We were just down there. There were quite a few people on the Arctic and the Photon, and, the kind of the new ENC two-liners, and you never see them take a hit. They're incredibly robust in the air, and but they have that two-liner feel that we all love, who fly two-liners.
And two-liner control as well. And
the two-liner control, which is a big difference. Yeah, which is a big difference. You can feel it, and you can push them, which is it's pretty neat to see.
I flew the Photon last year mainly, and really enjoyed flying that, like in Italy at Gembona, and where you can go on these long glides and you can use the rear risers all the time to control the wing, and you feel safe because you've got that control.
Yeah.
You have that extra level of control than you had before. And seas. So
yeah, I mean, I remember back in the day, and this has been a long time, but when I flew the Arctic 2, ENC back in the day, it was just at some point you're going to take a huge hit. At some point you're going to take a massive frontal, and you had nothing to tell you that it was going to happen. And these days now you don't see it happening. They're very. It's an exciting development.
I'm sure the technology is better, and the feel's better. So you're reacting to it a lot more.
Yeah, you can feel it. You can feel what's happening with the air, which is great. I mean, that's why two-liners are so exciting. And
I think the other thing about the sports class comps is they feel very supportive. Everybody is in there to help each other get the best out of it. Even the people that are pushing to win, but they're willing to pass information around all the time.
Yeah,
and
that's special.
I found it a really supportive environment.
Mentoring built in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Good to see people blossoming in that environment.
Yeah. One of the things I've been really noticing in our scene, in the U.S. comp scene lately, is that, people are coming up through the ranks and becoming very accomplished comp pilots way faster than, and, it used to be that, 10 years before you'd fly an END or a CCC wing or, a comp wing back in the day. And it would take longer to get there. It would take longer to learn how to perform with the best in the world. And, with the wings these days, and like you said, with the mentoring, Nate made a comment. Nate Scales, my neighbor, who's been in the game as long as you have. And he said, he was down in Valle and he was blown away by the scene now, because it used to be competitive. They used to throw beer bottles out of the window at each other's heads. And, if you were on a Firebird or there was that team versus the other team, and it was really competitive. And it's obviously still competitive at the World Cup end, and people want to win, but there's a lot of mentoring going on. There's a lot of, people are really helping each other out, and it's good to see. It's a pretty neat development.
As you said, pilots are accelerating through the process very quickly now. Very
quickly. It's almost scary. It's just, wow. But
becoming good pilots as well.
Exactly.
It's not like a shortcut there.
I'm sure a lot of that's just the trust in the glider as well. You have this machine that's very different than what you guys were dealing with, where, you're just, the whole object is to keep the thing open. Now we don't have to worry about that nearly as much.
No.
We can press. Yeah.
And that's what, like I said, with the reviews, there aren't really bad gliders anymore. It's just gliders have different flavors. They have different feel. And for me, the review is to try and express that so people can choose the wings that suit their style of flying. People have a flavor.
Yeah.
And
before we get to your accident, and I want to spend most of the time in the show on that, because you've had a pretty interesting few months, of course, and thankfully, I think we're heading towards a happy ending, which is great. But before we get to that, I've put out a number of shows on the X-Alps. These kind of, a walk and fly down memory lane. And I've done those all with athletes, but you and Ed and Hugh over the years have been very involved with the Red Bull X-Alps. And I thought it'd be really fun to pause here for a second and get your take on, it could just be a singular story, some crazy memory that you have from it. But, we're still a ways out from 25, but it's a subject that everybody knows, who listens to the show knows I love so much. But it'd be interesting to get your take from the other side, because it was quite different for me, obviously, this time being on your side of the fence, so from the journalism side of the fence, and it's pretty wild watching those guys and girls.
It's always amazing to watch them. And it's just every time they get faster and faster, and you think, they might not get around this year, but they do.
Yeah, right.
And it's been interesting how it's changed. I mean, I remember, it was the first time, and Dav de Gaulle was in it, and we were in the Ozone office. We're trying to support him and Nikki, his then partner, who was, supporting him. And we were just like, none of the technology was really there. We didn't have all the weather forecasting like they do now. And it was just a case of ringing up, the contacts of the company, who's the distributor in that area, ring them up, get the information. But I remember Nikki going, I don't know where Dav is. He went over this hill and I haven't got a clue where he's gone now. Because, there's hardly any tracking. It was really hard. And just the technology wasn't there. But now you can follow them. You can watch them firmly in 3D on your screen. And it's, that side of it's really changed. And we're getting a lot more access to what happens as watchers, as viewers, because every team has their own media people now.
Yeah.
So they're busy recording everything, putting it on their own social. And it's so much more open. And people say, I do hear a lot of people going, oh, it's more and more dangerous. It's getting more and more dangerous. But I think actually what's happening now is you're seeing more of it. I remember hearing Dav's stories at the time and it was just as wild.
Yeah.
Flying through storms, avoiding storms, getting tumbled. I mean, he told me about getting tumbled coming down through a valley and his reserve popped out. He managed to grab it, put it in his pocket and flew on.
Of course, as you do.
But nobody really knew about it at the time. But now that would be all over social media.
Right.
So I think when people are going, I think the race is getting sketchier and sketchier, it's not. It's the same race. It's just we can see it a lot more now.
That's that's interesting. I'm sure.
We get to see every moment.
Yeah, especially
now you were there flying alongside it, and that gives another element to it.
Yeah, and I've really upped my kit since then. This time I just showed up and they went, here, use this. And it wasn't that it was bad. It just wasn't quite right. And it made it really hard to take off. And, I had my own little X-Alps adventures because of the filming equipment. So I've now got really good gear. And we had this live platform that Red Bull gave Zoom, I think 48 hours before the prologues. I mean, we really didn't figure it out until the race was over. We kind of had it figured out when I was dialing down over Ellie, in a spiral dive going to the raft. And that was finally it works, literally at the end of the race. So I think that's going to be really exciting. We might be able to tap into Starlink next time. And I think that'll be
the possibilities are
possibilities
bigger and bigger, aren't they?
Yes, exactly. There's just so many stories embedded in that race that never even come out. There's things that happen to every team, every race that are, they're a book in themselves.
I'm sure. Yeah.
When you think of the X-Alps, what's the craziest thing you saw either personally or story you heard, or, of all the years? That's a tough one. I'm putting you on the spot here, but are there any that just, I remember one of my fondest and kind of head check memories I have is after the 2015 race. We made it to Monaco that year. It was the only time I made it, and had, I had the van booked for the wrong return. I couldn't even go to the party. Bruce and I drove all night after we got to Monaco, and we were just hammered, just so tired. And we got to the Zoom office in Fuchel, and Ed was there, and Big Ed, and he gave me this look and then he gave me this hug that was just, I'm glad you're alive. 2015 was a really windy year, and there were a lot of accidents that year and a lot of withdrawals. But he just kind of knew. He knew what I'd gone through, and he gave me this look that was just, I'll cherish it forever. But it was a real look of concern. And I often read that in you guys, because when you're embedded and you're hearing the stories and you're reporting on it and you're seeing the weather, it is a little spooky.
We get to know all the athletes. The brilliant thing about our sport is you can talk to anybody in the sport, and everybody's approachable. And they're like your friends within about 5 minutes, because we all share this thing in common. And so when we wander around at the start and we talk to people, we've become friends with them. We have a vested interest in them, and we worry about them when we watch watch the race going ahead from our offices. We're worried about these people because they're our friends.
Yeah.
And we feel it's and I think that's something really special about our sport, is that we get to mix with the best in the sport. It's like meeting people that are in the NBA or football, Premier League footballers, and you just walk and talk with them.
Right. Yeah, you want to talk to Kriegel? Go talk to him. He's happy to talk to you.
Everybody in the X-Alps has always got time. I know they have to come and talk to us because we're the magazine, but I generally feel that they all have time.
Yeah. Yeah, that is special. That's really neat.
It's something special about our sport as well. And you walk onto Gordon, Russ is there, he'll talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is really special. All right, bud. So what happened? What on that fateful day?
So I think it's a story of complacency, I think. It's kind of the end. It was the end of a season of lots of flying. It was and good flying and enjoying myself. And it was just another morning doing a hike and fly. I've been doing lots of hike and fly on our local hill. And nothing special, just a normal day. Walked up, lovely conditions, early in the morning. So nothing really happening. Took off, flew around a bit using some gentle lift. Flew along the hill a bit, along the ridge, and then came back. Decided to try and get up in the cliffs. And I think it's taken me a while to work out probably what happened. And it is a bit of conjecture because I don't actually have a full recollection of what happened. It all got blanked out at the time and little snippets. I can remember snippets, but that's it.
Interesting.
And I remember working a little bit of lift in this corner in the cliffs. And I followed it back over the sort of edge of the cliffs onto the slope behind. And I turned to try and keep it in this little bubble of lift. And I think I just spanned the wing at that point. And looking back at it, I think I'd been flying a normal big ENC2 liner earlier in the week, which has quite long brake travel, was used to that. Had been flying wings with fairly long brake travel a lot of the time. Hadn't flown the little mountain wing quite so much. And its brakes are set very short. So I think I just went to turn tightly and just overdid it. Not in itself a problem. I recognise the problem. We've spun gliders lots in testing and stuff. And it's something I always do with gliders when I first get them is, search for the spin and just take it to the spin point and do 180-degree spin and fly out. And I think the glider started to spin, so I released. And I remember the glider going out in front, so I went to catch it. And the next thing I'm on the ground. So I think I just pendulumed into the hill because I hadn't left enough space.
You didn't have enough margin there. Okay. Yeah.
So I sort of, have that snippet of it being in front, and then then
you're on the ground.
Then I'm on the ground. And then I have to think about rescue. So the complacency again, I hadn't really said what I was doing. My wife was not there. Nobody really knew I was actually flying.
Yeah, you're just going out for a little quick hike and fly.
Because you think, oh, it's fine. I'm just going for a hike and fly. I'll be landing at the field. It's fine. But luckily, one thing I've always been careful about is keeping my phone in a place where I can always reach it. And it's just something been drilled into me. So luckily, I was able to get my phone and call for help. And I was very lucky that the local school were on site. So our local instructor, Cedric Poussin, was teaching students. He got told there was something happening. He then got involved with organising the rescue. So actually the rescue went really smoothly. I was very lucky. So I could have been, if I hadn't had a phone, and I could have been stuck on that hillside because nobody would have known I was there.
Yeah, right.
But luckily I was able to phone, and my instructor got the rescue working very smoothly. He sent up his TI, ran up the hill to me, along with one of the students who happened to be a nurse in the fire brigade. So they were running up the hill. One of his other students had a drone, so he sent the drone up to find my exact position and guide these two guys into me. And at the same time, the helicopter was being called, and that was on its way. And luckily, another good thing here in France is we do have these rescue helicopters, and here it's very close. It's at Nice, so it's not very far away. It's 10 minutes flight time away. Nice. And I was very lucky that it was available. So it came straight to me, and it was with me in 20 minutes, I think.
Did they have to lift you out, or could you land?
They did have to lift me out. I don't remember the lift because I remember them arriving. They dropped the two paramedics, and they came and checked me over. I said, I think I've broken my pelvis, and I had some other small wounds, but they then obviously checked me over, decided I had what my injuries were, and they said, right, we're going to have to lift you out. And at that point, they gave me gas and air, and I passed out. Because they couldn't get a stretcher in, so I was just in a harness anyway, so it would have been fairly excruciating, I would have thought.
Yeah, right.
With a broken pelvis to be just harnessed out.
Did you just have a little string bikini harness, or a proper, did you have some protection?
I had an airbag on the bottom of it. I had a reserve as well. And another good thing that I had was a proper EN certified flying helmet. Because I did
take a pretty good hit to your head.
I took a chunk out of the helmet.
Wow. Jeez.
And that was something, we had been flying in climbing helmets, like probably earlier in the same year, me and my wife. And one of the readers had complained because they were on some videos going, oh, you should really be flying EN and EN certified helmets. And we kind of went, yeah, you're right. And at that point I went, actually, and we're not even saving any weight.
Yeah,
when I looked at the specs, I compared the specs, and Ed was going, I think, as a magazine, we should be seen to be doing the proper thing. And I'm so glad he said that, because, I took a whack to a rock somewhere along the way, and my helmet took the brunt of it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we actually made that that's been a mandatory thing in the X-Alps, which for a long time I didn't really understand. And climbing helmet's got to be, or ski helmet got to be just as good, but they're not. They're not made for the same thing, no. And by a long stretch. And so and like you said, the sub air helmet, I think Ozone's got one now too, they're just as light. You might as well.
That's what I was using, was the sub air Pilot.
Yeah, the Pilot. Yeah, which is great. That's what I've been using for years. So broken pelvis. What else?
A broken vertebrae up in the thorax, which was, I believe, from the sort of hitting over, bending over under the impact.
Okay.
So your body gets thrown forward, and that movement is enough to break a vertebrae. And I think it was a couple of cracked ribs and usual stuff. And so, I was taken to hospital and was left in a coma for a day, kept in a coma for a day.
Oh.
And then.
So
once I passed out.
They induced you in a coma?
So once I'd had the gas and air, I passed out, and I didn't come around for a whole day. So they kept me under for the next 24 hours.
They did that on purpose?
Yeah, because they wanted to stabilize me.
Ah, okay. Oh, wow. Okay, so there was risk then of spinal cord injury.
Yeah, they weren't sure at that point.
Yeah.
I remember it's obviously one of the first things you check when you're lying on the hill. They're going, oh, yeah, I can move my feet. That's all right. But as they said to my wife, that's no guarantee, because when they move you, they're keeping you alive. That's all they care about.
Sure.
Really.
Right.
That's the first thing, is they're keeping you alive.
Yeah.
So if they have, obviously they will try their best to keep your spine straight and stuff, but they can't guarantee it. And with the pelvic injury, there was lots of grinding going on down there as well. So yeah, I was kept in the coma, and then they did the first operation on the pelvis just to stabilize it with 2 pins. And then they brought me out of the coma, and I woke up in ICU on the ventilator and mouth, feed tubes.
Welcome back to the world.
Which was kind of, scary.
Yeah, that's very scary.
I think more scary for people watching. Like I've got 2 teenage sons who obviously came to see me, and the look on their face I won't forget for a long time.
Yeah, they're thinking, is dad going to be in a wheelchair? Or is he going to be, oh man, scary stuff. And the vertebrae, did that require surgery?
Luckily, that didn't, no. I had scans, and they decided it didn't need surgery.
So was that forgive my lack of body knowledge here, but is that was it a disc or was it the vertebra?
It was a compression of the vertebrae.
Okay.
So
you're a little bit shorter.
The scan says it's a 50% squashing of that vertebrae, but without any bulging. So that's a good thing. There was no bulging into the central canal.
What do they do for that? Did they go in and do MRIs and just make sure there's no little pieces that can cut stuff?
Yeah, so I had MRI scans to check that was all right, and that's when they decided they didn't need to do surgery on that.
Okay.
But
how long were you in hospital?
Well, I was taken to Nice Hospital, which is the local emergency hospital for our area. And that's where I had I was there in ICU. They then did the first operation, and a couple of days later I had the main operation, which was to put in 2 big screws and a plate across the front of the pelvis with lots of little screws. So I look like a Meccano set now. But I was there for probably 10 days. And then here we're lucky we've got these rehabilitation centres. So I got moved to one that's in Grasse, which is just basically you can see Gordon flying sight from it. And there they can do physio. There's they have lots of physios, and you've got all the stuff you need to make your recovery to get you back on your feet. For me, the biggest thing was I had to wait for the bones to heal before they could do too much. So I had 2 months of not being able to go above 45 degrees inclination. So basically flat on my back, partly because of the vertebrae and partly because of the pelvis.
Oh God, that's a long time to lay around.
That was the hard part mentally. Just the waiting. And also,
what did you experience there? What were some of the did you latch on to any? I don't know. Did you start meditating? Did you just read like crazy? Did you watch Netflix? What were you doing to help get you through that?
I did a lot of reading. Did watch quite a bit of Netflix. I mean, I got lots of good advice from some quite well-known pilots. Was messaging me lots, and like Tom Dodorlot, who had quite a big accident, I think, said, just take every day one day at a time. And that's such good advice, because it's really easy to go, it's 6 weeks is my goal. I get 6 weeks and I'll be all right. And then you get to 6 weeks and the surgeon goes, actually, you need another 2 weeks. And you just drop. I had that in that they said, you get different information from the surgeons along the way, and they say, so it'll be 6 weeks for repair, and then you can start walking. And then you get to 6 weeks, they go, no, you need a bit more because your bones haven't consolidated enough. And when you set that goal and it's taken away from you, it's such a huge mental drop.
Yeah.
I don't mind admitting there were tears at those moments.
Absolutely.
They were quite bleak moments. But, all the advice I was giving, taking one day at a time, and that's really helped. And I just kind of focused on working for each day, and then you go, it's several weeks have gone now, and
Yeah.
only a couple more
That
weeks.
day's done. Yeah, right.
But not try to think too far ahead. And just do, for me, it was, I was motivated to do what I could with the exercises I could. And the great thing is, because I was in this rehabilitation centre with the physios there, even when I could only lie down, they would take me up on my stretcher bed into the physio room, and I would do exercises with my lower legs and with my upper, with my arms to build the strength there, just to keep everything moving, but without putting force on it. So it meant that when I finally got the go-ahead to stand up, I could move a lot quicker, I think. And the acceleration, once you could stand up, it was like in a couple of weeks, I went from not walking to walking with a hoist holding me up, to then walking with a big walker frame, to then walking with a normal frame, to walking with crutches, to walking without the crutches, all in the space of 2 weeks. And it just felt really incredible.
Kind of like being 11 months again.
Yeah.
It sounds like you just suddenly go from the ground to the sky. Whoa, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And it's probably just as exciting as it was back then.
But you do these things and you I remember thinking paragliding and climbing are really good training for some of these recovery things, because a lot of it's the fear of the unknown. When you first take weight on your hips again, you're like, what's it going to be like?
Work?
Is it going to hurt? Is it going to break? Am I going to fall over? And I think for us as paraglider pilots, and I've come from a climbing background a bit, you do get used to taking those steps into the unknown a bit. And I think mentally we're conditioned a bit to be able to do that. So I think that helps with our recovery. And I definitely was able to draw on some of that and be a bit more mentally strong because we had that.
Was there guilt involved, with your family, with your wife, with your kids? I know that, Ed made a big point of, when I was preparing for this, to talk to you, that, you're full on family man. You take your family very seriously. You spend a lot of time with them. I recently had a guest on who also had a towing accident. Thad Spencer, a friend of mine out here, he had a towing accident in Minnesota, and he talked about that. Just this, you just overwhelmed. You feel you're not contributing to the family. You're not helping out with dinner. You're a patient. You're a baby. You're getting taken care of. It's just, especially, I think men are not very good at this. We're not very good at being convalescent.
Yeah. And I think you had to kind of almost mentally turn some of your wanting to take control, and you had to turn it off and sit back and let people do stuff for you. Because otherwise you'll get frustrated. You'll spend, so much of it is in your head, and you have to sometimes take a step back and go, no, I have to let these people take over because they know what they're doing. They are caring for me. And it is hard, as you say, especially probably for men that are control freaks. And I think a lot of paraglider pilots are control freaks as well.
Yeah.
With quite strong personalities and egos, even the quieter ones. And it's why we do this sport. It's part of why we do the sport, I think. But for guilt, you obviously feel bad for the family. I mean, I'm so lucky that I've had a wife that's she is a pilot as well, so she understands that side of it.
That's helpful.
But she's been a solid rock through the whole thing. She's been there all the way and supported me. And we've discussed flying again together. And she understands that flying is such an important part of our lives that, it's almost feels weird that I wouldn't not fly again.
I was going to say, have there been any of those conversations? Is there, in any of the teary moments, has there been any, I'm not going to do this again?
I did. At one point earlier on, I was like, will I fly again? I don't know. Don't know if I'll fly. And I think, like you said, the guilt thing was very much in there. But you have conversations with conversations with my wife. I've had conversations with the boys as well, because they're old enough, they're teenagers, so we can have those sort of conversations, and that helps you realize that it's part of you. And it's, for me, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm sure not everybody would come to the same decision, and that's everybody's, their own person. But for me, it's been such an important part of my life for 30 years. For me, it would feel weird if I couldn't come back. I mean, I'm not there yet.
Are you flying now?
No.
Okay.
Because I think it doesn't feel like I'm ready yet.
Physically.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sort of only walking 3K at the moment, maximum.
Okay. Yeah.
It's still a bit of an effort. There's some bits of nerve damage in the feet.
When was the accident? Remind me the date. I remember Ed sent me a text that day, but
it was September the 15th. So it's been quite a while. But
October, November, December. So it's been September,
months.
October, 4 months. What is the prognosis? Is it 100%? Is it 80? Where do the doctors think you'll get?
I've been told it should be a full recovery.
Huh, great.
Although I might get some pain where the pelvis wasn't quite closed properly.
Okay.
So maybe not doing big, huge walks. But yeah, the prognosis is good. And
is this your first pound in paragliding?
No, I did break a vertebrae very early on.
Okay.
Actually in the World Cup in Switzerland many years ago, like 25 years ago. But that was relatively minor in the fact that it was a compressed vertebrae. I wore a corset.
Just a hard landing.
Wore a corset for a few months, and that was it. Okay. At the time, it felt big, but yeah, compared with what's just happened, I realised it's not that big, but it did have. I know it had an effect on my flying afterwards, as all these things do. Like I became a lot more careful about landings after that accident.
Yeah. Do you, when you think about flying now, coming back to it, or, I'm sure you've kind of envisioned your first flight after this, off some lovely peak behind your house. Is it scary to think about that? Is it, I can't wait? How does that feel?
A bit of both, I think.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. I really love flying, and I love the freedom of it, so I can't wait to be back in the air. But I know, I'm pretty sure it'll be scary that first time. Yeah. So I'm a bit nervous about that, and a bit, nervous about how I will react, having had such a big hit.
Yeah.
But then I've had so many people messaging me about their instances and like telling me about their stories. It gives you hope for your future. And you go, if they've done that, I can do it. And that was one of the reasons I was really happy to talk to you about this, because a lot of people, I didn't broadcast it much at the beginning because it was all a bit personal. It was all a bit scary and a bit, I didn't know where it was going. But as I've got better, I've put stuff on Instagram and stuff, like walking out of hospital and things like that. And loads of people have then messaged me going, it's great to see that. It's really encouraging for me. I'm in the same situation. I've had an accident. And it was the same for me. Like Tom was one person that got in touch, and Violetta, her story with breaking her pelvis, obviously that was close to me. And Maud Perrin, who broke her pelvis last year, the acro pilot, who's now back in the air. And seeing these people, overcome it and move on, especially people like Violetta, who's not only can overcome it, but is now in the World Championships, is competing at high levels, on the podiums at high level comps, and it helps you move on and overcome it yourself. It's not so unknown. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and with Violetta, I need to get her on the show about that, but it wasn't just one, I think she's had 6 is by my count, pretty major incidents. Not all of them physical, not all of them, ended up in the physical harm, but, or trauma, but still traumatic. It's traumatic going in, and, she's really stuck with it. It's impressive.
Yeah. And again, it's the beauty of our sport is we have access to all these pilots that will take their time to talk to you as well. I feel very blessed that I've had so many people sending me messages. Like every day in hospital, I was getting messages from around the world from pilots, some that I knew really well and some pilots I didn't know very well, just giving me encouragement, giving me, their wishes, and it really helps. It really, really helps.
That's interesting to hear. I never know how to approach that. It's always, is it too much? Is it too little? It's great to hear that those were all received so well. It's nice to hear from everybody.
Yeah. For me, it was really helpful. Just maybe feel part of the family again. And
yeah.
Because to me, paragliding is just one big family, and I feel very privileged to have found this sport that gives us that feeling.
I had a kind of a similar complacency type thing that ended better in terms of, the lack of trauma, but mine was a throwing reserve that wasn't attached. And I've talked about this on the show before, but it was switching gear late night, coming back from a comp, dark, didn't want to wake my family, just completely blew it. And then flew the next day, long drive, and then doing some acro training over the dirt and through, and wasn't attached, just the most basic, most idiotic mistake there is. And then the second part of it was that because I was flying, a different, I'd been on my comp harness stuff, and suddenly I'm on my sup air, acro kit. It didn't flash into my mind immediately that I had a second reserve. So I watched the one fly away from me and literally thought, wow, that's funny. And, it's just perfectly deployed reserve that wasn't attached to me. But, had I reacted faster, I did end up throwing my second one, but it took some amount of time. It seemed to me to be forever. It was probably 2 seconds, but I was already very low when I threw the first one. So the second one I threw, and I watched it roll out to the end, and then I hit the ground. And so it didn't have a chance. It didn't deploy, but it was along the same type of lines that it was the gear switch that, my mind just wasn't. And ever since then, we always talk about, you need these cheap mistakes. Ever since then, when I go from my hike and fly to my comp kit to my acro kit, it's this, I do it every flight now where it's, my hand goes down to now I'm on a different bit of gear now. This is where this reserve is, because it's different. We've done a lot of talks over the years, and the magazine's been very good about covering this, that they should all be the same. But until that time, we have to just remind our brains over and over and over and over, where this stuff is. You didn't have time for a reserve, but it sounds like the switching of the gear is, that's gotten me as well. The brake thing, that's also gotten me. Some of us fly a lot of different kit, and you especially fly a ton of different kit.
And it's not something I didn't know about, because a friend of the magazine, somebody that writes for the magazine, Andy Pagg, had a big crash in Nepal a few years ago, where he'd been flying tandem all season, jumped on his solo wing, forgot the brake travel was much less, hit the hill, and broke his back. And I've always remembered him telling us about that. And so it's not something I didn't know, but you don't think about it, and you need to think about these things.
God, a lot of lessons here. Given the span of your flying, and you had the one accident in Switzerland at the World Cup. This one sounds like kind of complacency, margin, gear. How do you incorporate this? What are you thinking about in terms of just when you do get back in the sky? I mean, that sounds like that would be it. Those are all great lessons. Like I
Yeah,
said, we need these, but
I think, yeah, to make sure you're in the moment all the time and think about, every flight is a flight.
yeah,
It's not just a little fly down to go and land. Yeah, once you're off the ground, the consequences are high if you make mistakes. So you have to treat every flight with respect.
I wonder how how has it impacted your wife's view of flying? Is she less excited about it? Same? Is it impacted
actually,
her?
She's not flying at the moment anyway, because she did her ACL last year.
Shoot.
So she's on a recovery from that, but she's due to start flying before me, I think. So she seems quite up for it. I thought it might affect her as well, and I'm sure it has. You can't be around accidents and not be affected, can you? Especially when it's people that are close to you. And but she's worked in the industry. So she gets to hear about. I mean, we get to hear about a lot of accidents, so it's not something we don't know about. I think if you're a weekend pilot, you can maybe ignore that side of it a bit more. But if you're in comps and around, writing for the magazine, we hear about probably lots of the accidents that happen. So it's not like something we can get away from knowing about.
That's interesting. I was just actually talking last night with my wife, not about accidents and not about paragliding, but there's a Dave Chappelle bit in his latest, stand-up comedy series where he starts talking to a young person in the audience and says, I really feel for you because, back in my day, I remember being at school when the Challenger blew up and it was a huge deal. The whole world. I mean, people were, it's like Kennedy assassination. You know where you were, you remember it. It's a big deal. And now with social media and the news around the world, everybody knows everything. If you want to, you have access to everything and you just become Gaza, Ukraine, bad stuff every day, all the time. And it's hard to feel much emotion about really bad things because you're inundated, it just kind of, bad, scroll. In our sport, unfortunately, does have a lot of this. And I have noticed even in myself that, some things are they just kind of brush aside. Oh, another pound. And then there are some like Nick Nanans that really, you get desensitized. That's the word. And there are some like Nick Nanans that just, I think, really shake the foundation of, if he could get hurt, I mean, and obviously he was taking enormous risks mostly, but not that day, not the day that he went in. It sounded like a pretty reasonable day to go flying. These do, in a sense, not set you back, but they grab you, don't they? I mean, they just, whoa. I mean, it's that realization that if it can happen to him or her, it can happen to everybody.
I think it's interesting what you said about not taking risks, because I think that's one of the things that I've maybe struggled a little bit with, is the fact that I thought this was a really safe thing I was doing.
Right.
Yeah, that the hike and fly thing, this
that
particular
day,
style of hike and fly
is
something I did a lot, and it was always something I felt was very safe because it was from a known site with good weather always, and it's not like flying cross country through big peaks or on strong days when it's going off.
Yeah,
it felt like a safe thing to do, and then still I managed to hurt myself doing that. So that's,
I mean, I get that's that was a more articulate way of saying what I was trying to say. Is that I in some ways I don't like these accidents more. Because
they do make you
damn
think
it,
more.
Really? I mean, a really, really good pilot who's very experienced, who's got a ton of years under his belt, and you weren't competing in the X-Alps when it's blowing 60K an hour.
No,
you're up for a morning perfect perfect day. I went in pretty hard in beer on a pretty perfect day, where, it was just, what the hell just happened? And
But then that's complacency, isn't it? So
absolutely. Yeah. Complacency.
So
it's a chapter in the book, as you remember. You helped me write that book a lot.
Fully engaged.
That's it. That's an interesting thing. I mean, for sure. I spent a lot of time with Jürgen, the safety director of the Red Bull X-Alps this year, up at Tres Cime when we were waiting for Ellie to come through. And so we'd seen a few athletes come through, and we had a long chat about this very thing, just the enormous risks that Kriegel is willing to put himself in to win. And yet, we don't see many accidents at that level. We have over the years, we've seen accidents, but they haven't been, knock on wood, there hasn't been a bad one. And it is quite interesting. I mean, I've reflected on this a lot, that you are taking so much more risk, and yet you are at much less risk in the race, I believe, after doing it, because I could not take that kind of risk a day before the race or a day after the race. Pretty much guaranteed I'm going to pound, because you're in it, and you have this invincibility, which I know is not accurate, but it's a mental, you are in it. There's nothing else. There's no other distractions. There's no complacency. There's no, you're on the ball. You're paying attention.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think, yeah, I mean, I've done some hike and fly races, and my experience of them was they're incredibly mentally draining, because your brain is just going all the time.
Yeah, right.
And you're on that heightened level while you're flying and finding takeoffs and preparing to take off. But yes, you're taking risks, but because your brain's working that much harder, you're taking control of them, taking control of the situation, so you're less likely to have an accident, even though you're in a riskier environment.
Yeah.
But you don't operate like that normally, do you?
No. And it is interesting. I mean, to in my experience, to fly well and to cover kilometers, you really want to be more in a flow state. You want to be very relaxed. It's kind of the opposite side of what we're talking about. I mean, but then when you're in a flow state, of course, you're letting your system, which knows what it's doing, take over, and you are incredibly reactive and on it, and your speed is but it is interesting, isn't it? Because you feel very relaxed and almost, when I perform the best, I'm almost asleep. Yeah. I just, I'm kind of just.
But then when you look back, you go, actually, I was on it. I can tell I was on it.
Yeah.
But it was just happening sort of almost back in the subconscious.
It is. A lot of it. Yeah, right. Slow thinking, fast thinking. Marcus, thanks for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. It was probably hard to relive some of that stuff, but I think it's useful, and it's a good reminder for all of us that of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Aviation's dangerous.
Yeah. You should bear that in mind when you take off. That's what I mean. Complacency. Every flight's a flight.
Yeah. Okay, Marcus, we're going to sign off here, but anything else you want to say? I understand you guys have a nice little promo going on.
Yeah. We'd love people to come and subscribe to the magazine, be part of the family. It's we hope that it's a great source of information for pilots, and it brings everybody together. And at the moment, we've got a prize draw going. So if you subscribe by the end of the month, you could have the chance of winning a wing. So you could have the choice from Advance, Ozone, Gin, or Super.
Whoa. You get to choose your wing?
You could choose your wing up to ENC, up to and including ENC. So any wing up to and including ENC from those 4 brands.
And where do people go to do that? xcmag.com/what? Subscribe?
xcmag.com/subscribe.
There we go.
And you can see the different options. And you don't have to have the paper magazine. You can have the digital magazine if you're on the road all the time. So you can just subscribe to the digital magazine. All the subscribers are going to be in the prize draw. And that includes all the subscribers that have supported us over the years that we're very grateful for. They'll all be in the draw again.
Fantastic. There you go, folks. Go to xcmag.com/subscribe and begin to win a wing of your choice. Marcus, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm excited for the healing you've had and the healing to come, and excited to see you back in the air one of these days. And there's no rush, as we've all learned. There's plenty of time to partake in this incredible activity. So, good luck, and fast healing.
Thank you. Great to speak to you.
If you find the Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or however you get your podcast. That goes a long ways and helps spread the word. You can blog about it on your own website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your pilot friends. I know a lot of interesting conversations have happened that way. And of course, you can support us financially. This show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, a lot of storage and music and all kinds of behind the scenes cost. So if you can support us financially, all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. And you can do that through a one-time donation through PayPal, or you can set up a subscription service that charges you for each show that comes out. We put a new show out every 2 weeks. So for example, if you did $1 a show and every 2 weeks, it'd be about $25 a year. So way cheaper than a magazine subscription. And it makes all of this possible. I do not want to fund this show with advertising or sponsors. We get asked about that pretty frequently, but for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I've said many times on the show, I don't want to do that. I don't like having that stuff at the front of the show. And I also want you to know that these are authentic conversations with real people, and these are just our opinions, but our opinions are not being skewed by sponsors or advertising dollars. I think that's a pretty toxic business model. So I hope you dig that. You can support us. If you go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, you can find the places to support. You can do it through patreon.com/cloudbasedmayhem. If you want a recurring subscription, you can also do that directly through the website. We've tried to make it really easy, and that will give you access to all the bonus material, little video casts that we do, and extra little nuggets that we find in conversations that don't make it into the main show, but we feel like you should hear. We don't put any of that behind a paywall. If you can't afford to support us, then just let me know and I'll set you up with an account. Of course, that'll be lifetime, and hopefully you'll be in a position someday to be able to support us. But you'll find all that on the website. All of you who have supported us or even joined our newsletter or bought Cloud-Based Mayhem merchandise, t-shirts or hats or anything, you should be all set up. You should have an account, and you should be able to access all that bonus material now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.